Welcome back to Vinny's Aquatics. Thank you everybody for joining me for this one. We're on the road to 2,000 subscribers. We should be there soon. Do me a favor, hit that like button. It helps with the algorithm. And if you're new to the channel or you haven't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button and smash that notification bell. Thank you. So you're asking yourself, Vinny, what is this going to be about? Well, let me tell you. We're going to talk about today some things that we don't think about that cause fish death. All right? Look, somewhere in the world, somebody woke up this morning to a tank filled with dead fish. And they're scratching their head. They just don't understand why. Now, look, it could be something catastrophic that happened in the tank. The crash of a filter, a stuck heater. Of course, those things happen. But there are a lot of deaths that never get solved. The mysterious deaths. Because as hobbyists, we kind of solely focus on what's going on in the tank and not the environment around it. And the problem is, extraneous factors can be just as deadly, if not more deadly, than anything that happens within the tank. So we're going to take a close look at that today. And there's a couple things on here that actually surprised me. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about toxic shock, toxins, and outside influences that might kill your fish. The first one we're going to start out with is noise pollution. It's something a lot of us don't even think about. Now, the problem with noise is that sound, it can cause acute or sometimes chronic stress in the fish. It weakens their immune system and it leaves them wide open to a variety of infections. And in some cases, a sudden loud noise, it can be enough to shock a fish into an abrupt and immediate death. So as much as you like to rock your Metallica or whatever you're doing, to get your groove on around your fish, remember, the rumbling bass notes of a loud TV or a stereo are enough to terrorize a fish. So any tank situated by a speaker is prone to problems. Try to keep the home cinema and the aquarium away from each other. Unless you do what these people did here and make a boom box with fish in it, because why wouldn't you do that? It looks great, nice and comfortable for the fish. This next one is one of my pet peeves. This one drives me crazy, okay? Now fish, they partially detect the world around them through their lateral line system. It's a sensory array. It lets them detect the tiniest of changes in water pressure. So when you subject them to sudden shock, like a slap against the glass, it's the equivalent of having a shotgun go up right by your head. Kind of like this woman. Well, maybe not like this woman. Oops. And the worst, look, I have children, I love children, but some of them are creeps, and they're the worst. They always slap and tap the tank. That's why they're always getting yelled at inside of the pet store. But pets and slamming doors can be just as bad. I went shopping the other day. I was looking for some camouflage pants, but I couldn't find any. Now this might be the most important part, all right? The oxygen in your tank comes from the air around it. So subsequently, anything in the air nearby can get into the water and cause problems. Worse still, water is great at attracting airborne pollutants and collecting and concentrating them. Now, some everyday chemicals that we use in our house are worse than others. Some of them, if you read the packaging, will even point out that they're not safe to use in the vicinity of a fish tank. And if they have that on the label, take their advice. Don't use it around your fish tank. Everybody wants their room to smell nice. Of course we do. But air fresheners are little bundles of death where your fish are concerned. The chemicals that bring that fresh smell are frequently toxic to fish, even at low doses. Spray fresheners can provide sudden acute poisoning, while the slow release, the plug-in fresheners, they release chemicals that gradually accumulate. If the packaging doesn't say it's safe with fish, just assume it isn't. And think about just think about the fact we're spraying toxins in the air. Just think about that. This one I didn't even think about. Cigarette smoke. Cigarette smoke is heavy with toxic nicotine. And even though I can't prove it, I would believe that e-cigarettes could do the same thing. Now, some fish, like a goldfish, are tolerant to it, but some marine fish are incredibly fragile. I was reading a story about a guy whose whole reef tank got wiped out by a single cigar. Yep, good thing I don't smoke cigarettes, right? Wink, wink. Here's another one. Have you thought about deodorants and perfumes? Now, that's the reason that a lot of fish tanks that are in, say, a teenager's room can fail, because they're spraying that around and it gets in the tank. Always spray in a different room than your tank. And if the perfume has been applied to wrists, definitely keep your hands out of the tank. Now, another one, everybody wants to, you want to keep your furniture clean, so you're going to use some furniture polish. Now, airborne polish is a huge issue. While you shoot it on the cloth first, it's not quite as bad, but spray the polish on your cloth elsewhere in the house. Then use it to wipe in the tank's vicinity. But be vigilant for signs of stress and poisoning in the fish when you do so. Another thing is, if you want to redo your room or something like that, you want to use paint or a varnish, they can be just as bad. Don't think for an instant that you can just cover the tank and paint around it. You'll need to remove everything out while you refresh your walls or whatever you're doing in there. Now, those are some ways that airborne poisons can actually take out your fish, and you won't even know unless you think about it. Now, let's talk about contact poisons. Now, that's stuff like hand soap, hand sanitizing gels. Everybody's using them a lot more since, the C word. But it's essential you use them after going into your tank, not before. I knew a guy, he wiped out everything because he was doing the dishes and he still had a little soap residue on his skin. And another thing, your buckets. Don't cross-contaminate your buckets. If you use buckets like a lot of us do, the bucket brigade, then make sure that you have a clean bucket just for your fish. Don't go use it to wash your car. Now, another thing, since it's the summer months, insecticides. Now, they might be less of an issue for fish, but they're outright lethal to shrimps or any other invertebrates. To leave some eastern countries, plants must be sprayed with chemicals that kill hitchhiking bugs. The new plants that haven't been soaked or rinsed appropriately are a common cause of shrimp deaths, making their flesh turn opaque before they die. With some of the insecticides, a rinse of your new plants will not be enough. You're actually going to have to soak them for several days. So look into that, especially if you have shrimp. Another thing we don't think of is fish medicines. Believe it or not, fish medicine can be extremely toxic. Too many newcomers, and some of us old guys, think that if one drop will fix the disease, two will fix it in half the time. Medications are designed to work at a set dose, usually just enough to be lethal to pathogens, but not quite lethal enough to harm the fish. Overdoses can cause major organ damage, clubbing gills and ravishing kidneys. Now, when you do your water test, always carry out your test away from the tank. Never put the sample on top of your aquarium while you wait for the results. If you spill that in there, you could also have a big problem with your fish. One more thing, salt. Salt should be handled with care. Used to excess, it will accumulate in the water and can start to dehydrate fish. It may sound odd, but it happens way more than you might think. So, how do you tell if there's a case of poisoning? Well, the symptoms, they can vary between fish, and as well as depending on what chemicals have affected them. But here's a few general rules to watch out for. Enhanced colors can often be associated with toxins in the water. And I mean by that is stress markings, such as dark bars or spots on the body. Another thing is, if you see your fish gasping at the surface, that can be from waterborne problems like ammonia, but it can easily be introduced by a chemical that's irritating its gills. Also, lethargic behavior and resting in one spot. It might be natural behavior for some fish, but when all are doing it, you definitely need to investigate. And if you notice erratic behavior, flicking or trying to jump from the tank, it can be from a sudden change of pH, but it also can be an escape reaction for something nasty that's gotten into the water. So you got to keep your eyes open what you do around your fish tanks. Now, how do you fix it? That's the best question, right? So what I'm going to say is, if you don't know this already, keep saying this till it sticks in your head. The solution to pollution is dilution. See that? I'm a poet and I didn't even know it. Now say it 50 times in a row. Water changes, I'm going to say it again, water changes are essential in suspected poison cases. The sooner you can dilute down the offending chemical, the better. In mild cases, a course of 20% daily changes over a week, they will definitely help. But when you have an emergency, you might want to change 50% of the water or more in one go. Now, there's no hard, fast rules to this, but remember, if you take out more, then you also risk upsetting the filter. So you got to keep an eye on your water changes. Of course, the best thing is not to poison your fish in the first place. Of course, we know that. You know, we don't go into the store and go, oh, I can't wait to poison this one. But yeah, definitely pay attention to what you use, what chemicals, and to be honest, do the same thing in your household. Think about if you have a dog or you have a cat, what are you mopping the floor with that they lay on all day? You know, sometimes their food gets on the floor and they lick it up. You got to think about these things. You got to think about the air fresheners that you're breathing that in all day. Now, another thing, this is one exception where I do say carbon will help. Now, you throw a little carbon in there, because I don't normally use carbon, but it will definitely help with a removal of many of the unknowns. And keep some polyfilter handy. They're not cheap, they're also short-lived, but they can definitely be the difference between dead fish and live ones when you're having a crisis. Those are my thoughts on outside influences that can kill your fish. I hope you guys learned something from this. I hope you guys had fun listening to it. And just be careful. You don't want to wake up to a bunch of dead fish. That's definitely no fun. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time on Vinny's Aquatics. Woo!